Okay.
Hey guys, Eitan here. It is episode 4 at Talk to Eitan. And just before we begin, I just want to let everyone know that if you do have any questions or any comments, you can please comment below, and we'll do our best to answer it. So, presenting in the show, we got Namala Hickey. Welcome, Namala.
Thank you. Thank you. Nice
So,
to be here.
great, nice to meet you too. And just to get things going, please tell us about yourself, where you're from.
Well, my name is Nirmala Hickey, as you mentioned. I just turned 50 this year. I have a spinal cord injury. This happened to me. Seems like ages ago, but also seems like yesterday. When I was 16, um, I was climbing and had some incident happened, and I fell and ended up with a C5-6 spinal cord injury. So that was about 35 years ago now, and yeah, so that's part of the story. Uh, Before that, anyway, my name Nirmala is Indian name. I get asked a lot. That's almost one of the, especially people that are from Asia or have some familiarity with names, and they ask me, "Oh, well, where's that? How do you have any?" And then it's always a conversation starter, right? Or dampener, depending on where you are. I lived in the States, and it became so annoying that I changed my name. Actually, I was in Florida, and there would be normal. This was, anyway. It's better now. So that I got because my parents, um, they encountered a guru in the late '60s. They were both in university in upstate New York, Buffalo, and my mom was from Brooklyn, and my dad is Irish Catholic background from Buffalo, New York, and yeah, and so they were both students at the university there, and they encountered this guru, and they were swept away, and sort of this his uh, what he called teachings from the Hindu Vedas and texts, right? That he was going to translate for them, and so they became devout followers, you could say, and began sort of not only them, but like quite a large number of other young people within that generation that were, you know, protesting politically, and as well as they had they were trying to stay alive. They didn't want to go to war. They were being drafted at the time, so that was an incentive to either escape to Canada or um, my mom was involved in helping people cross the border, for instance, at the time. And my father was more of just a he was very impacted by the assassination of Kennedy and both the Kennedy brothers. Right, he was his family, my family were followed Kennedys as though it was the best thing that happened. It was, they were Irish Catholic, and he was and then so he grew up. Uh, his uncle, my grand uncle was a Jesuit priest, and he was uh, they kind of idolized Kennedy. So when he was a teenager on the side, he was on the football team, and then first he sees the Kennedy assassinated, Martin Luther King assassinated, the other Kennedy, then the brothers assassinated. So then his whole, like, sort of, this is the way I look at it, and also from conversations with him, his his framework of politics in the United States was shattered, right? So at that, then it come crucial into that framework is this Indian guru that tells him, this is all bullshit anyway, and just just, leave it all behind and do what I say, and I'll give you the keys to the universe, right? Something to that effect, right? And so they were like, my dad was a very skeptical person, but I guess eventually he just, and that's the story I tell. So I've written it. I've written the book of it. Starting, that's a, then it goes into my. I was born into that with my parents didn't even really know each other before they joined. They were put together as per his wishes. He was
Ah.
signing couples to join together based on whatever criteria. I guess from uh, the criteria would have been that they were both intelligent from a university, and that they were both, he needed children in his fledgling organization.
So,
So,
so tell me, you were you actually born in Canada, or were you born in India?
I was born in Canada,
You're born in Canada, and then
Toronto, yeah.
how many years did you spend in India for?
Altogether, probably 4 to 5 years.
Okay.
Yeah, of interspersed through different various years at times.
And is that where did the accident occur in India, or
No, no, it
you came
occurred
back
in
from Canada?
Pennsylvania.
Oh, in Pennsylvania. So after you had the unfortunate accident, how did you adapt to it? Could you explain
That's a good
what
question.
happened? What was the process?
Well, here's the thing. So, as we were raised within the confines of this organization, I had traveled quite a bit, but was always within their communes or their temples, right? And we weren't exposed to the outside. From a very young age, we were told that people outside were, uh, you know, I don't want to paint a general term that everybody within the organization had these viewpoints, but this is what the standing viewpoint was. Generally, what referred to as mlechas and yavanas, which is a term from the Vedas, which refers to uh, you know, sort of vagrants and untouchables, like you would find in the Old Testament or something,
Okay.
referring to people that didn't come from wherever the locals came from, right? These were foreigners basically. So this was basically white people and anybody who wasn't Indian, basically. But I was white, right? But it still referred to people on the outside, right? People that they were just meat eaters and karmis. Karmi was a term that became So there was a whole language. We had a whole language in there. I mean, like I said, I learned, well, I didn't say this yet, but I actually learned Sanskrit from when I was very young, right? The alphabet and and the pronunciation. I can't say that I remember all the different, but I'm familiar with how to many verses and read a lot of it. It's what we were exposed to, and the yeah they asked the question again. What was the question again?
Yeah, so I was asking before when you had the accident in Pennsylvania, and
Right.
I
So
said, like,
okay,
and then how
yeah.
did you adapt to
By
it, and
that
how did yeah.
by that time, my world was within that organization, but I was itching to get out of it. I was not one that wanted to stay, and the thing was actually starting to sort of fall apart at the time when I was 16, right when this happened to me, and I was going to get my license. I tell the whole story in there, and we had already been through it. The childhood was really. I didn't live with my parents since I was 4. We got sent to a boarding school in Dallas, and then from there I went to France. From France I went to India, and then for a year there, that was in 76, 77 ish. And then from there I went to Seattle and spent some time there, and also in LA, Los Angeles. And then we traveled in like a caravan, like a vans with a bunch of kids across the country. Went to Philadelphia. I ended up living in Philadelphia for a good year or so, and traveled and spent time in New York and Boston. And then I went to, I ended up at this farm in Pennsylvania. They
Ah.
had a dairy farm. So that I spent a good year there at the farm. and was really getting used to it there. But then I was sent back. I never knew where I was going, and I would get very little forewarning that where I would be going next. You know, it wasn't like, oh, this is what we're gonna do, and we're gonna do. No, you just on the plane, you're there. You
So
know, or you.
who decided this for you? Who decided where you go? Your family
I don't
or
know.
oh, okay.
I assumed it was my parents. I didn't really know.
Okay.
Sometimes I would have verification from my parents. Oh, this is where you're going. I didn't have much contact with them on a regular. Yeah, our days were very regimented. We woke up early in the morning every single day, uh, at 4:30 in the morning, 4:30 in the morning. Yeah, every day. And on the farm, I got up, ran for like a mile in the freezing Pennsylvania winters,
Yeah,
whether
you
it
can
was
imagine.
yeah, in the snow and ice, wearing these like what they call doties, and yeah, it was a life, right? And then by the time I was 16, me and my buddies were like, let's find out what's going on outside. It's got to be a lot more interesting. We haven't really been told everything that's going on. We had started to mingle with the locals, especially in Pennsylvania. We were going to the pool. The locals always looked at us with kind of a suspicious eye, like, what the heck goes on over there? You know, and their interactions with us, where the farm would hold like open houses, invite the locals, and then they would come by and they would give them food and things like that. Sometimes on weekends or holidays, the farm would invite locals, put an ad in the paper or something like that, right? This was in Juniata County, Pennsylvania. So it's like dairy country. It's like way right smack in the middle of like farm territory, right? All farmers. And so this was very odd to them, you know, that some Hindu cult came and bought
Oh yeah.
some prime farm territory and starts, you know, having these kids walking around with bald heads. And, you know, this was in the 80s, right? And so yeah, I came back from, I had to go, I'd gone back to India that year, 1985. I came back from India, and the whole, it's in the story, uh, came back to see my friends at the farm. I was trying to convince one of them to go on a road trip with me. I wanted to drive to California. I wanted to get our driver's license because I knew at 16 we could get our license in Pennsylvania, and I knew how to drive already. I'd driven cars on the farm and tractors and stuff, and I was like, "Yeah, let's go. Let's hit the road." And he didn't really want to go with me. He had gotten a girlfriend, which was something we had never been able to do. So within the year that I went to India, my 15th year, and the time I got back, things changed a lot. Like the whole infrastructure started to just collapse. The schools were collapsing. Nobody could have authority. We were all getting too big to really buy into it much anymore, right? And for them to really tell us what to do. Plus, the adults were losing their faith to a degree. They were like, you know, they had been practicing this since the leader died in 77. So they had carried it on until like the late mid 80s. And then it was like, whoa, wait a second. There was like, what are we doing this for? And there was child molestation. It just a lot of bad shit happened, right? And then suddenly that was where, and then I ended up injuring myself.
That's a turning point.
And then I was basically in the system. They all just abandoned me. My parents didn't know what to do. They didn't even know how to be parents. They hadn't been my parents. I thought it was on my own. When I ended up with the spinal cord injury, my dad might be getting home, so I'll take a break till he goes in his room. But I had yeah, I was very independent. I had gone and I had traveled across India by myself. I went from West Bengal, northern West Bengal, all the way to past Delhi to Mathura on my own, on with no money, on the trains and taxis, right, in the train station. So in New York City, I had been in New York City by myself. I felt confident going across the country at 16. You know what I mean? By that time, I don't think all the kids that went through it ended up with that by that age, but at that age, that's how I felt. I was like, I just want to get out of here. I want to see girls. I want to find out what, I want to find out what, like I was ready to get out. So I ended up in the hospital with a broken neck. They didn't even call the ambulance. This is how so removed they were from 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 being civil members of society, that they didn't want the I still can't completely analyze the reasoning, but they rolled my body onto a ply board without bracing my neck and put me in the back of a station wagon. And the guy that was driving the car actually was a former Marine in Vietnam. So like, this is how disassociated they were with their mind, right? Like, I'm sure if you ask him now why he did that, and I'm friends with his sons, still good friends. His son joined the Marines right after as an adult. One of my friends from school, and from the school that we went to, right, and his other brother is also a good friend of mine. They he yeah, he was the one that rolled me onto the board, and then they drove me down. And by the time I was there, the nurses and the ER people were just like, "What the hell are you guys?" And they put me on a helicopter. I went to Danville.
Oh wow. Okay.
Danville Hospital in Pennsylvania. It's a Geisinger Medical Center in Danville. I went to hospital there, and then I just slowly got to realize how nice these people were that I had not gotten to. Nurses were
Oh,
amazing,
I see.
doctors were amazing. They just kind of adopted me because they could see how when my parents came to visit on a blue moon, they were just like fish out of water, when it came to parenting. And the religion had it taught you to abandon relationships on this planet or in this plane, that none of it was real. That, yeah, like I said, the book tells, attempts to tell the philosophy part of it too,
What
that we were.
what I'm interested in, and I think what other people are interested in is, so you said you went to Pennsylvania, and what was the diagnosis? What exactly was?
Cervical 5-6 spinal cord injury.
Okay. And so, yeah, I think what would be interested if you could tell us, how it's affecting your life now. How do you live with it?
Okay.
Like, what's the kind of
It's
things?
diagnosed, excuse me, cervical 5-6 complete spinal cord injury, which means that, there's not partial damage. That at that point, at that time, when you had an injury, when the it was like think of it as a hose with water running through it. You pinch the hose. If you manage to stop the water from going through completely, and then you again reposition the hose so that the water flows. Well, in the case of the spinal cord injury, that's complete. There's no flow, and in an incomplete injury, some of the information gets through, like it trickles through, right? You might get. So that's how I was diagnosed, and the difference was because at that time, it was actually 1 or 2 years before the protocol changed significantly, where most a significant amount of damage that occurs in spinal cord injury, if it's not like the neck isn't like severed or the spinal cord isn't actually severed, is done by swelling that occurs within the first 24 hours after, and there's nowhere for the pressure to escape. So within the block of the spine, it just expands and breaks all the nerve cells. They just become, I guess, whatever, pressurized to the point where they become unuseful anymore. And at that point, they still hadn't developed the protocols. Pretty much, oh, okay, he's going to be, whatever he is. Now they put you in deep freeze. The instant they know that you have a spinal cord injury, you're put into deep freeze, you as low as your body can possibly handle
How do they do
and
that? When you say deep freeze, where do they put you in?
they put you in a cryo chamber
Do they?
with a
Oh, wow.
really low
Okay.
temperature,
Okay.
so that you're
For how
there's
long?
no
For
swelling.
how long would they put you in there for?
they put you in there for, until, and I don't know all the ways they treat you, but they probably have some drugs they use now as well to keep you alive in that state. But it's
Wow.
basically until the swelling period goes away, because there's a certain period of time where all the nerves just want to swell up, right? And they can prevent. That's one way that they prevent a lot of the damage that occurred, both because they didn't fasten my neck, they didn't secure my neck. I had to ride on a 25-minute drive down winding, hilling Pennsylvania roads in the back of a road laying on a piece of plywood on the back of a station wagon, and then it just, yeah, that was
So even though you had this unfortunate injury, it hasn't stopped you from
yeah. I
going to
mean,
university. So yeah, what? So yeah, tell us what happened after that. Where did your
so
journey go from there?
so I I guess I had a bit of an indomitable spirit, because I didn't really take it as a I didn't take it as a I just had this attitude of nothing's gonna stop me. If it doesn't kill me, I'm just gonna keep going, right? And
Yeah,
also at that point, I believed with all my heart that I was gonna figure out how to walk again. Because before that, even despite the fact that we were raised without any athletics and things like that, I was very fit because I worked on the farm a lot, right? I was addicted to working, you can say, like in the barn and with the animals, and like work like that. And I would run, and I loved to run and things like that. So I felt really fit, right? I didn't feel like and the food there was also good on the farm. In India, it left a lot to be desired, but that's another story.
okay, yeah,
And then
yeah.
it's not because Indian food isn't good; it's delicious. It's just what we were given
Oh, I
wasn't the
see. Yeah,
best, right? Yeah, and there is plenty of food there too, or there was plenty of food. It wasn't that there was a shortage of food in the community either. Um, um, but we were given, yeah, the scraps. And so I went to um, rehab. Again, there wasn't a lot of responsibility taken or any for my welfare by my parents. So in many instances, like for instance, my surgery itself was delayed by like 2 weeks because they couldn't get a hold of my parents to find out, because my mom wasn't living at the farm in Pennsylvania, and neither was my dad, and I didn't know where either of them was. That's how disassociated we were. I didn't know where my mom was. I didn't know where my dad was. When they asked me where my parents were, I said, I don't know. And they couldn't believe it. You know, how does a kid not know where their parents was? When was the last time you talked to them? I don't know, months ago. Where are they? Literally, I don't know. Are they in Pennsylvania? No, I don't think so. Where are they? I don't know. Could be in Europe, could be anywhere. I don't really know. That, imagine their disbelief when they come across a 16-year-old with this guy. I just turned 16 like a month
oh
ago.
wow, okay,
So, yeah, so they come across this and they're just like, they were so they kind of adopted me. I had the nurses all like kind of adopt me in the ER and in the intensive care unit. Wherever I was, I started to feel that these people were much nicer than any of the people I had encountered growing up. They had, they were caring. I had been misled a lot about how people were and what their motives were. Right? I was told that they had this term called karmi, and it was this derogatory term used for anyone who wasn't a member. And literally, what it means was somebody that works for results, as if that's a horrible thing, right? Like everybody work, like it just was a derogatory work way of referring to everybody as only working for material things, right? No, they're not aware of anything spiritual, and they're not aware of the deeper meaning of life. So all they work for is like something that they can get, right? A material thing. And it was totally crap, because and I didn't, it was just a term. It became a term, karmi, they're karmis, right. And they had all these terms like that. But the fact was that the nurses were so nice to me. They made sure when I got out of the hospital, they got me set up in an apartment. They had social work, get me a place to stay. They got me funding for caregiving. I was 17. I moved back near the farm. Some of my friends that were on the farm were high school age, started going to the local high school on the football team. I couldn't go back really because so I ended up with my GED, but I was hanging out with them, going to football games, drinking a lot, just partying in my wheelchair, and then, Voc Rehab there in Pennsylvania put me through some kind of evaluation and decided I should I'd be best to go to university. So then I started going to university.
What did you study? What did you study there?
I was studying psychology at the time. I didn't even know. All I wanted to know, I was thirsty for information. I took, it was the first time I took biology, chemistry. I took all the courses that I could in general education, and I kept a 3.8 or above for the first 2 years I was there because I was so thirsty for information. And this was Shippensburg University of Pennsylvania.
And then after that, so you did psychology, and then where did you go from there?
And then I ended up meeting, I was staying, I was, like I said, partying for a few years, or a year at least, when I got out of rehab with some of the kids that we had grown up at the farm, and we were starting to hang out also with locals at that point, mostly, just people that had pickups and went to the raceway on the weekend and drank beer and grew up in names like Baumgartner and Heckler and, just names, the German names, a lot of German names in the middle of Pennsylvania. Yeah. And going to the roller junction, getting drunk every weekend. And then I ended up with a pressure sore just from sitting in wetness and not taking care of myself. So I went to rehab. This time I went to a good Elizabethtown Rehabilitation Center it's near Harrisburg, Elizabethtown, Pennsylvania. And it was a good one. And they taught me a lot. It was a year late. I was supposed to go to something like this immediately after, but my parents just put me in one that was close to where the devotees were. And it was called Pleasant Gap Rehab near State College, Pennsylvania. And it was just, I was the only person there that didn't have a stroke. Right? I was a 16-year-old. Everybody else was an elderly person. And they didn't know what to do with me. They didn't really know what my expectations were. And they were really nice to me. But I didn't get the proper rehab for a spinal cord injury. And then in Elizabethtown, the year later, I went there and I learned a lot. And they were the ones that did the rehab for evaluated me for, and they evaluated me for university, and they put higher expectations up for me, right? Because I was thinking, coming out from the other rehab, they were like, oh, pretty much you can't do anything for yourself.
You got reevaluated.
Yeah, in a big way. And so I was a lot more excited and I came home, and apparently one of my friends had moved into my apartment and completely trashed it, right? Throwing parties and everything. And I didn't even want to, and this hippie guy from the sort of they called them fringies. They were like people that joined but never changed their name. They were just kind of like, there was a guy there that owned like 8 acres right off the farm. And he's like, well, I have a house. And he had just divorced from his wife, and he was living there with his son, like a 5-bedroom house. And he said, why don't you come stay with me? I didn't really, he was from East LA. This guy was from East LA. He had been in the gangs. The guy was just a tool and die maker and he was an alcoholic. He had broken his back in a parachuting accident when he was like 30 years old and had taken pills ever since. I didn't know this, but part of his reasons for wanting me to move there was so that he could get pills in my name. I didn't know anything about pills. I didn't know anything about any of this stuff, right? I just wanted to go to school and hang out with my friends, right? Um, and yeah, so I moved in over at John's house, and he also grew weed. He had a big like pot growing operation at his place. And this was in the 80s when Bush was president. So they used to fly helicopters overhead and stuff. And yeah, and so but then I got really tired of that life, you know, and he was drinking and falling down the stairs, and it was just, it was not that there was some scenes there that were not good scenes, him
I
fighting
mean,
for
how old were you at the time?
17.
Oh, you're still very young. Okay.
I'm living by myself on my own, spinal cord injury, just, you know, no family really around, that barely, you know, talking to my mom. And I had seen my sisters at this point. I had two sisters that were in there, and I was living near the farm. And then I just you know, my will to survive kind of took over, and I was like, you know, screw this shit. I'm going back to school. You know, I'm going to school. So I contacted the Voc Rehab, and I was like, you know, let's get me into university. I want to go to university. I want to go. So they got me into the psychology program at
Yep.
Shippensburg, and it wasn't that far away. It was like, and John, the guy that I was living with, he would drive me to school on the weekend because I would bring a couple pounds of weed that he would grow, and then I had a bunch of students there that were like, this was like the best weed on campus for a while, right? They were mostly deadheads, were the you know, that were in like journalism and broadcasting and things like that.
So fast forwarding, you did the psychology, you finished it, and then what did you
I
do
didn't
after?
finish
Oh, you
it.
didn't
No,
finish it. So you started it, and then what happened from there? What was the journey
what
from there?
happened was I came back one summer. I didn't have a lot of direction. I just picked psychology because I was interested to know about why people did things the way they did, right? And so I came back one weekend, and John was just completely unable to help me, you know, like physically do my care. And there was nobody that I could find that could do my care, and I was desperate. So I started calling people. I knew a lady at the farm, a Jewish lady actually, and she was married to a guy from Montreal, Quebec, and they had a family. She was always really nice to me, right? And she had helped me a few times. So I called her and asked if she could come over and help me into bed or get up or whatever I needed. And she said, "Oh, she was really busy." But there was this nursing student that was on the farm, that she was also really nice, and she would give me her number, and I called her. It turned out uh, she was from a family in Connecticut, and she was a Yale University nursing student, and she was became interested in the farm because in the cult, because they had these kind of programs where they would try to recruit people based on, you know, animal protection, and she was a real animal lover, and so she had come to the farm as a young recruit, um, you know, you know, under the guise of the cow protection program. But meanwhile, in my mind, I was thinking, yeah, they're going to try to marry her to some 40-year-old, and then this and that, and I could just see that they were misleading. They were lying to her. So I told her when she started working for me, they really did not want that. And I told her, man, and then we kind of fell for each other, right? At that time, right? We kind of fell in love, and then I moved out of John's house with her, right? We got our own apartment in Mifflintown, Pennsylvania, which was that podunk town, the nearby nice little town, but not really anything going on there besides the chicken factory, the kosher chicken factory.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's quite funny. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, no, that's true.
Yeah. Okay.
And then, but she was, oh, my dad's home. Okay, well, let's pause. I'm going to get a drink anyway.
Yeah,
Hi,
sure.
Dad. My mouth is getting really dry.
No. Yeah, carry on. So you moved in with your
Oh,
girlfriend.
she was
Yep.
she was really smart. Her family, her dad was the CEO of Stop and Shop, and it was a supermarket chain in Connecticut and in New England. Stop and Shop, and they had a drugstore sort of branch of it as well. I can't remember
Don't worry.
but yeah,
Yeah,
and
yeah,
her
yeah,
her
yeah.
uncle was a an umpire on the National League umpire.
Oh, okay. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and and he was her dad was quite well to do, and she was from a good family, Italian, and she was beautiful, and and we ended up moving into that apartment, and then um, uh, I stayed in school for a while, but then she ended up becoming pregnant. So I made, this is what a decision I regretted, but it happened because I didn't have the support of family. Uh, is I dropped out of school and I moved into, we got a loan, a house loan, and bought a house in Pennsylvania, a little house. Actually, if you, oh, you can't see it. You can see a little of it. I painted a picture of it. It's behind me on the wall over there. Um, uh, we had a little house there, and we got it approved on what they called the farmers home administration loan. They called it FMHA, and it was for low income families buying a first time home.
Okay, okay, okay.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah,
sure it still exists in the States
yeah.
and in some places. And we ended up moving there. And then till our daughter was born, we had our daughter at home. It was a home delivery with a midwife. She was my wife at the time. We didn't get married legally yet, but we did marry at the farm. We tried to get them to do like one of their ceremonies. Um, uh, but it didn't. There was, like I said, we were on our own. She actually was willing to go along, and I was still believing in my mind that I was going to walk again. I had no doubt in my mind that I would figure this out. I was reading all kinds of esoteric books about it and about you know walking, like, say, I knew from my exposure to many ideas within the Hindu uh, literature that they did not hold uh, this body to be um, the the purveyor of energy. It's not the conduct. It's a conductor, but it's not the energy. It's
I
not the
see.
force, right? And I knew that in my mind, it only made sense that what we experienced uh, as our parameters on healing, like what we limited our uh, uh, belief system to, was not necessarily what it was really capable of. And because I knew that, things had, even if you just look at it scientifically, up until this point, what if you would have told somebody, that in 100 years we're going to have little squares that we hold in our hand and we can talk to somebody on the other side of the planet and see their face, and they would have thought you were nuts, right? They wouldn't even have said, "Oh, it's plausible." Yeah, that I can see that happening. They would have just said outright that you were out of your nut. There was no physical way that this could happen. So just in that, I knew that there was lots of things that we could not fathom with our current
So
awareness of.
so fast forwarding now to 2020. Tell what I'd like everyone to hear is how do you live with this disability now? Like, could you give us some examples of your day-to-day life, like how you get through it?
Yes,
Yeah,
I would say this. now, well, there's COVID's happening, so it takes away a lot of the avenues that one might have for for sort of escaping, which is going out and meeting friends and
Yeah.
going to sporting events and things
Mm.
like that. It
Yeah. Yeah.
just brings you back in yourself, which is okay. Um, but how I get through now is I have routines that I'm required to do every day, which just maintain my body, which are stretching and eating and waking up at certain times and sleeping at certain times and drinking enough. It's mainly to do with hydrating and um, those things that we all have to worry about. But for me, it's a much bigger part of the equation, right? It takes up a much larger portion of my energy than it does for someone else because I have to plan it and I depend on other people. So, and I have to organize when their schedules with relation to mine, whether or not they can come in, how they're feeling. I have to take into account and on a personal way, on a personal level, whether they can come in if they're sick or whatever, right? And so I have a staff of maybe 4 or 5 people that I rely on regularly. And then on top of that is the psychology of it, of, of um, understanding what you're going through and being able to make the right decisions for your health, right, on a day moment to moment basis and a daily basis and then a weekly and whatever a yearly basis. But for me it really was the reason I started taking the Aphro-D was for the moment to moment basis. I just felt like in my personal life, it it was being affected by uh, my physical, my health life, and vice versa. So my inability to for my body to handle things correctly was affecting my uh, primarily my psychology in my ability to communicate with my staff and with people around me because I was so overwhelmed with the sensations of my body. So it makes for a lack of makes for indecisiveness, right? Because if you can't at the ultimate level you can't tell what's going on in your body, then it's very hard to be decisive in your dealings with other people, right? You can't you become less reliable because and you become preoccupied because you're having aches and pains that you can't really share with everybody else and you don't know the answer to them and you're not getting that from medical professionals, so you're kind of overwhelmed to a degree. That's how I felt. I didn't feel overwhelmed, but I felt like I was handling it, but I didn't feel like I had the strength of voice to say, uh, you know, it was just like if I was hurting, somebody might say, what's hurt, what is it, and then I would be like, well, I think it's this, and I think it's that, and if I'm feeling overwhelmed by the fact that it's getting worse and the symptoms, see, here's where I'd have to sort of educate the viewer here about my body. So
Yeah. This is important because I'd like
this is the important thing.
the
Yes.
viewers to understand and have, I don't want to use the word, people don't know and they're ignorant. They just look at someone and be like, oh, he's disabled. But this is where I would like you to actually tell people, like, yeah, the education part. So yeah, please tell us.
I'll
Yeah.
do my best. So you as a a fairly pretty functional human, uh, if you stand in front of me, you are defying the forces of gravity, because if you didn't have all the little parts in your body functioning, you would just collapse to the floor in a heap, right? Because gravity is that strong, it just sucks you to the floor. So in my case, uh, I have all those forces acting against my body, and it's a continual state of being that I need to. My body has not accustomed itself to. So it has a autonomic nervous system and a central nervous system. The central nervous system doesn't function to the extent where it doesn't do the things that, like, for instance, if I walked up to you to shake your hand, you would stand up, walk up to me. You
Yep.
wouldn't think about it. It's an automatic response, but you're in effect defying gravity. You're in effect taking the machine that is your entire body and moving forward, standing up, operating it in all of its complexity without even a thought, right? So in my case, none of that takes place just because that one connection with the brain has failed. And so the other nervous system, the autonomic nervous system, it functions, right? But it tries to compensate for the central nervous system. The autonomic nervous system regulates things in your body that still operate in my body, like um, my digestion, my skin, the operation of shedding skin or the and creating new skin, or the operation of blood flow, the operation of heart rate, the operation of blood pressure, and so the two nervous systems are so used to working together. Like the autonomic nervous system, I feel is kind of like communicates to you almost like a pet or something like that. Like it doesn't tell you outright what it needs, but if you respond, if you're good at responding to it, it performs better and it's happier, right? And you become in unison with it.
So
So the two,
do you have to kind of psychologically, so you said, like, like we take, I'm just shaking someone's hand, it's like, it's almost like muscle memory, I'm just doing it. Do you have to like think about it, or like how do you, or do you try to think about it and it doesn't happen? And how, like, psychologically, how's
yeah, it just
that?
doesn't it just
It
doesn't
doesn't
happen.
happen, yeah.
Think
Okay,
about it. I can think about it and it just doesn't happen.
I see.
And the bad part of the part about that I'm getting to you about with the autonomic nervous
Yeah.
system is that after a while, and I can't say it's the same for everyone, but its attempts to communicate to the central nervous system without receiving any answer become overwhelms it, and it becomes over responsive. And then where I was at when I started taking the Aphro-D was I was getting a lot of triggering of this autonomic, what they call dysreflexia, which is one of the sort of reactions that your autonomic nervous system is responsible for, which is the effect of raising your blood pressure and causing cortisol to be produced and causing your muscles to tense up, causing you to have spasms, all these kinds of sort of reactions that I guess they're called fight or flight responses,
Okay.
right? And when the two systems don't have each other to depend on, like brothers or like a couple or whatever, like the way that they work together so synergistically, then the autonomic nervous system becomes it sends out signals that it's just that it doesn't have any cause for, right? It just starts making your body react in ways that are, it's like a cascade effect, like say, and that's what I was getting, like all the time. I was getting these symptoms of high blood pressure, sweating, so uncomfortable. And that's what I was talking about just a few minutes ago, how it's hard to make decisions. It's hard to call the banker on the phone and say, I want to put this money here, or when you're like, your hairs are standing on end, your muscles are trembling, you're having like tension on the back of your head, and you don't really know why. So it's not like you can say, oh, move my foot over this way and I'll feel better. Or, you you have to try to figure out what it is that's causing it, right? And what it would happen was it would be caused by something that was just, it shouldn't have been going that far. It was like, okay, it's just this, but it would go much further than the effects on my body would cause me much more trouble than it should have. So the thing I noticed about the Aphro-D was almost, well, not almost, immediately it just completely put a dampener on that reaction, right? Like I felt comfortable for like a week immediately after I started taking. I felt no dysreflexia. So that means none of these headaches and tremors that I was normally getting. I was shocked, right? I was like, this can't be true. You know, this is such a dramatic effect.
Have you tried, I mean, obviously, do you take medication as well, or do you take other
Yes, I
drugs?
do. I do. I was
Have you tried other supplements as well? Have you tried other supplements and things? Have you experimented?
I have nothing. I've tried vitamins and those just
Yeah. Okay.
supplements like that. I have never tried anything that I actually and things for also for erection or sexual
Yeah.
help. I've tried like Viagra and Cialis and things, and they have negative side effects on my body that in some ways increase the dysreflexia. Or yeah, they do. They actually definitely do increase the dysreflexia. So that although it might cause an erection, it would increase some of the other symptoms of the dysreflexia as well, like just the uh, the the just this feeling of your muscle clenching and it's not comfortable. And then also it had effects on my digestion.
Yeah.
And so and this was my idea of taking the Aphro-D was like, I'll buy a month's supply, and if I take it and it doesn't do anything to me, or I find, because I'm skeptical by nature, I was like, it probably won't work. This guy's probably full of shit. You know, that's what was in my mind. Honestly, I'm always skeptical because of my background, even. You know, but I was like, but I'm gonna give it a try, and if it works, I'll be pleasantly surprised and I'll be very happy, right? So when it did work, immediately I was like, man, I'm putting in another order of this. I got to see. And then when Dr. Farhan was you know sort of excited for me and with me and wanted me to share my experiences, I was hesitant because I was like, well, it's too early to tell. What if it's just, what if it's it could be
Placebo,
any other thing?
like a placebo
Yeah,
effect.
placebo, or it just, some days I feel better than others. I want to give this a few months. I want
Yeah.
to see
Yeah.
what happens. But I've noticed many effects. If the interview would be specifically about those things, I could I'm starting to sort of catalog in my own mind what the actual effects have been
What would you
from
say
the
would be like the top? What would you say the top three things it's helped you think? This three kind of large elements.
um the first one is what I just told you about.
Okay.
The overreactions of my body, just bringing my body to a state of sort of of peace almost. It's like settling the autonomic nervous.
Balance, almost like balance. Yeah, like a balance.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like like what?
A balance.
What's I
Balance. Balance.
balance?
Balance.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it's like I can now I can go, oh, it feels like it might be my foot. And it's really uncanny because then it ends up being it was my foot. How did I know that? Because I don't have all the other clouded noise in my system telling me it's this or that. It might be this, it might be that, it might be this. Somehow it's much more easy. That's a huge thing. Secondly, I would say, and that has a lot of spin-off positive side effects because from that itself, which are the just being able to take the time to make correct decisions, to do those communicating things that I told you about,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
if you're a salesperson, you need your wits about you. If you're a writer, you need
Yes.
your wits about you. If you don't, if you're all your nerves are on end, you can't have your wits about you. I don't care how good of a fighter pilot you are, it's going to be tough, and I've been operating under those conditions for years, of having to force myself to deal with, the things that I want to do, in order to do the things I want to do, to deal with the thing, to have those things always in the forefront, dealing things that I don't want to deal with, like trying to figure out that there's a little wrinkle under my leg and it's causing my entire body to freak out. You know what I mean? Like that's how severe the reaction would be, right? To a small, now my body's just like, okay, there's a wrinkle under your leg. It's no big deal. My body just handles it easily. So there's that. And then in terms of my body being working better, I've had erections in the morning, which I didn't have for years, and and that's not even so important to me, other than it's a barometer of my health, and it makes me feel good to know that's still functional. You know what I mean? Because I was although I was injured pretty young, I had a really good body, and I had a lot of attention from girls that I grew up with and things like that. I wasn't really sexually active much, like once or twice when that happened to me, but I was also not aware of how much attention I did have at the time, from how much it my the death of my body. It was a bit of a death, actually, but it impacted. That's how it impacted all the kids. The cult. It impacted the cult as a death. It was like the death of an era. What happened to me. It was the death of innocence within the cult, because it reverberated around the whole organization, because I was like the little kid that traveled to all the schools. So all the kids around knew me. Many kids that I didn't know knew me because I had been there. And I used to play the drums. They have this drum called a dola drum in India. It's a two-headed drum. Punjabis play it here. It's like don't. Yeah, like I used to play that like really, really well, and I played that my entire childhood, or one variation of that drum, and I used to play it all the time, and I was really good at it. And they had these like singing sessions with music, very Indian, right? Which I grew up with doing all the time. That was like a big part of my life. So, getting back to my body, that was functioning. And then lastly, so there's those two things. And then the third thing I would say, and this one I'm still exploring,
Yeah.
and I'm constantly finding this to be a real source of interest, and I think it's going to lead me where I need to go. It's just, I was thinking about this question before this interview, how to convey. I mean, there's so much information out there now about like about ways of honing, and Farhan's and you guys are on top of it in many regards with these master classes. There's so much information about how to improve the way you approach, not just your physical but your mental, uh, you know um, the tools you have in your mind, right? And how it affects what's going on around you. So that is what I'm getting a good effect from the Aphro-D, is
Mental
where
clarity. So like mental clarity. Yeah.
exactly, and
Mental
I'm
clarity.
able to build on it. I'm able to sharpen it by almost. I watch MMA, and I really like watching interviews with the best of the fighters, and how they think, how they approach their the psychology. And I was watching an interview with George St. Pierre the other day, and he said that what someone asked him what advice he would give to Connor, because Connor just lost that big
Oh
fight.
yeah,
Right? Yeah, what advice he would say about coming back or about anything in general. And he said that um, what you have to do is you have to look at what you did in preparation for that fight, and you have to uh, think about what caused you to fail, or what contributed to your failure in that preparation. That like um, and then you have to uh, uh, even if that's not true, even if that's not actually the reason you failed, if you believe it, it doesn't matter what anybody else believes in it, and then you change that and you do it according to George St. Pierre. That's what you needed to get out of it. You needed to change what you had done to prepare for that battle that you felt contributed to your failure. So in my circumstance, I can now afford to self evaluate and be self critical a lot more accurately and a lot quicker than I would before, and it makes a huge difference because you can, if you can be objectively look at yourself, you can look at, and this is where I think that the most benefit people can get, because I've read on the group, people say I've been taking it for 3 months and I
yeah,
don't
yeah.
notice anything. Well, that's because you're not critically self-evaluating. From my perspective, you're not looking
Interesting.
at what you're doing, the mistakes you're making that are leading to the continued failure that you're experiencing. The Aphro-D is helping you to at least go coast along and be like, no, I don't see it. I don't see it. I don't see it. Right? You're just ignoring. It's like you're a bobblehead on the road.
So this goes on to the final thing I wanted to ask you is like, what would be the message to A, the general public about your whole life experiences, and B, to the members in the group? So what would be your final message to all those people out there?
Um, to the general public, I would just say that you have to like, not unlike what George St. Pierre does, you have to find something that motivates you. You know, even if it's not true, if it makes sense to you, there's some truth to it that you will eventually find that what you need to find out of it, right? And in terms of um, uh, motivation, like and for the members of the group, it would be just what I said before about um, not being hard on yourself, like not calling yourself, but we're definitely refraining from calling yourself names, but at the same time calling yourself out for doing the things that uh, are not contributing to your success, and not being too hard on yourself either. Just going, okay, I know I didn't quite live up to my own expectations again, but I did better than I did before, and I'm doing better, right? Overall, I can see a trend in the right direction. I'm going to stick to the trend. I know I'm going there. I know I'm going to get there. I know that I'm making incremental steps. I know I want to increase those incremental steps. I know that I can increase that I can and increase the breadth and width of those steps. Uh, I'm more than capable of. Look at Just think about it for a second and say, can I do A, B, and C? Hell yeah, I can do A, B, and C. I'm I just haven't quite done it yet, but I'm doing better. I did this. I did this a little better. I'm doing this now. I'm eating better. I'm getting up on time. Whatever those little pieces to your objective that you are meeting your expectations with. Be prepared to acknowledge them at the same time. Be like, well, I'm going to do better tomorrow. I'm going to do it tomorrow. I'm going to do it. And even if you don't and keep telling yourself, I'm going to do it tomorrow. I'm going to do it tomorrow, until you're actually, and then one day you're like, hey, I'm actually doing it, you know? Oh, crap. I'll just hang that up.
That's okay.
That's the
Great.
kind of thing.
Okay.
And I think, yeah, people that say I'm not feeling anything, think about it. Think about how you can use the fact that you're not feeling anything to notice what you could change. You know, like maybe that's awesome that you're just sitting there going, I'm not, but you're continuing to take it. You obviously feel like it's doing something for you. You're just not taking advantage of that that balanced feeling. Like I was
tapping into it. Yeah, tapping into it.
Well,
Yeah.
I was saying you're not feeling maybe you're feeling so good from it that you're just not wanting, you're feeling unmotivated, but at the same time, you should use that feeling of sort of zen or balance or whatever to do something. You know what I mean? Like that's the difference. Like I feel like I still have that hunger to get better, to improve, to you know, show people what you're capable of, whatever, right? So you don't want to lose that, and you want to use what Aphro-D, you know, the clarity of mind and the sort of your nerve calmness to find ways to make those steps happen, right? If it's going to the gym, if it's listening to audio books, if it's you know, going for a jog every day, whatever it might be in your own life, you know, like everybody finds a different way to do it, but yeah.
Namana, thank you very much for joining at the Talk to Eitan show. It's been very educational and informative, and I hope that people listening have learned something about about yourself and the condition. And I hope you keep going with what you're doing, keep pushing, and
Thank you.
and there's no reason why you can't walk in the future. I don't see why not. I think anything's possible. Nothing's impossible. I don't think, especially with all the new technology that we're like advancing all the time, and I really think anything's possible. So keep going with that, and I hope to do another interview with you in the future and see where you are, see how you progress even more. So yeah, thank you very much, and we'll speak very soon.
Okay.